My name is Noah McComas, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to take a look at my portfolio. Back in elementary, I would always play old games that revolved around the Game Boy and the DS. And out of those games, Pokemon ended up being my most favorite, mostly because of the design they took with pixelizing it. Because of that, I ended up always drawing my characters with that blocky style, which ended up making me attached to it. And because of that, when I started my career in graphic design, I saw all my digital artwork through the smallest of pixels. I created this piece in Illustrator that reflect both my love for the old Pokemon games with how they were pixelated and how I see everything through a computer screen. The main focal point of the image itself ends up being the self-portrait of me. A sense of contrast is made as the lights and the darks fight over each other, and you can see the darks popping out first against that light background, and none of the pieces within the image is lost. And a sense of rhythm is also made as the use of inorganic shapes are used over and over, same with the colors that are used over and over. And a sense of unity is made with those colors being used over again, and the shapes being used over again. Project Jericho was a client we had for Service Learning Capstone, where they wanted us to create an infographic, an invitation, and a t-shirt for them, revolving around their kids. Some of the things they mentioned for the kids were that they drew cats and clocks. So I decided to implement that with the easel to show that art. The piece itself together, the focal point of it ends up being the infographic since it stands out the most, and a sense of movement is made as you go from the infographic to the invitation down to the t-shirt. And contrast can be found within the piece as you take from the lighter colors contrasting against that dark blue, mostly the orange and the yellow being the most prominent. And rhythm can also be shown from the sense of reuse from the cat, the easel, and the clock within the piece as the tails used throughout each one. A sense of unity can be seen within the piece as a reuse of colors can be seen in each respective part of the project, with the dark blue, yellow, and orange, and the reuse of different images as the cat tail, the cat itself, the easel, and the clock. Next up is the billboard, which is one of my oldest pieces I made. And I created the assets within Illustrator and then took them into Photoshop and finalized everything within InDesign. The main focal point of the piece ends up being the billboard, and a contrast can be seen against the dark background with that white color, and then also with the dark gray against that white, making it pop out. Rhythm can also be seen within the piece as the reuse of the head, gears, inspirational quote, and logo is used within the billboard, the poster, and the brand guide. The same can be said about the colors that are used as they travel between each piece. And balance can also be seen within the brand guide with asymmetrical balance, where both sides over here are the same, but as you go on, each part of it gets bigger or smaller. For electronic imagery, we were asked to recreate a book cover of our choosing, so I decided to choose Merc as mine. I haven't fully read the Merc, but I've read some of it, and I've learned that the book itself revolves around a monster that was summoned, which is why there's a summoning. I originally wanted to put the monster on, but I felt like that was unnecessary and would lose some of the different assets of the summoning circle. So instead, I made it so the text up top could help identify what it could possibly be, which is a slime. The main focal point of the piece itself ends up being the book cover's front page, and movement is seen as you're going down from that over here to the next summoning circle, going up and then to the side. And also contrast can be seen with the lighter colors going against that dark background, helping them pop. And then rhythm is also seen within the piece as the use of the images and fonts within the piece is reused throughout each part of it. Now, Bespoke was one of the projects I really enjoyed making, but funny story about that is when I was reading it, it ended up being bespoke instead of bespoke, which in turn made me think of bees. So I ended up using honey bees and honeycombs for my chocolate bar packaging, which was a project we did in digital illustration. The piece altogether is made within Illustrator, as the individual chocolate bars and then the mock-ups of them are all made within Illustrator. The focal point of the portfolio page ends up being the logo for the piece, but the individual focal point of the packaging ends up being the honey, which stands out the most and grabs your attention. A sense of contrast can also be seen within the piece, as the honey here, you have the lighter part of it contrasting against that dark part, and same can be seen within the honey itself contrasting against that dark background, helping it pop out from it and not be lost. Asymmetrical balance can be seen within the piece, where both sides over here are even, but as you go on between here and here, it expands. And then rhythm can also be seen within the piece as the reuse of the brand name, the logo, and the honey is seen within each piece. The only change to that rhythm is the flavor of each piece and the background color of the honeycomb. We worked with the client Wagon Row Leather Company in my logo class to create a logo that was both Western and represented the company itself. So I created a logo that had the horse to create that Western theme, and then outlined it with the needle and thread that represent the company itself. The logo's made within Illustrator, but the individual pieces themselves, the mock-ups, have been taken into Photoshop, and then everything has been laid out within InDesign. The main focal point of the page ends up being the brand guide, and then a sense of movement is seen as you're going down after reading and then seeing this and move upwards. And a sense of contrast can be seen within the piece as the dark colors are going against that white background. Same can be seen here where that dark gray is going against that medium brown. And a sense of rhythm is also used within the piece, as the use of colors are used within each piece, same as the logo is reused within every piece. So the event rack card is one of my favorite pieces within this, from how far I changed it from the original. And the funny story behind it is when we were picking out our events, I wanted something that I could get a laugh from, enjoy doing. And then I found one that involved beer, and I did end up getting a laugh out of it. The beer mugs are made within Illustrator, while everything else has been made within InDesign and then taken into Photoshop and mocked up. Contrast can be seen within the piece as you have that dark brown on the text contrasting against that yellow down there, and then the white contrasting against that dark yellow. And then since rhythm is seen as the reuse of bubbles are used within each part, say with the colors with the text is used on each part of this, while the titles are used in white. LCA wanted a logo that represented their company, and since their company represents connection through communication, I decided to create the logo where each letter is interlocked with each other, representing that connection. And then to represent Ohio, I ended up putting the state of Ohio within the logo so it can easily be identified. The piece itself is made within Illustrator and then taken into Photoshop and mocked up in each, and then taken into InDesign. The focal point of the page ends up being the brand guide, and a movement is made as you go down the brand guide over to here and then up. And rhythm is also seen as the reuse of the logo is made on the mugs and the t-shirt. In a sense of unity is made as the colors are reused.